Are you fully committed to making your dreams come true? Hi, I'm Jessica Huang, your career transition coach, and welcome to this episode of Permission to Flow. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, you will see that the setup of the podcast has completely changed. This is the new podcast studio space that I have been working on for the better part of the last 2 months, and it's finally done. It's definitely been a wild ride, but here we are now. So, welcome to this very first episode in the new space. We are going to talk in this episode about 3 lessons I learned along the way. The first is self trust. The second is what I like to call committing to the bit. And the third is enjoying the process. Now, let's talk about self trust. Now, here's the thing, I think it's so important to learn how to trust your own decisions. And this is something that is certainly a lesson that I am repeatedly learning, and something that I think has been a real struggle of mine, to be honest. Whenever I would have to make a big decision in the past, I would look to everyone else and get a billion opinions to the point where I would get incredibly overwhelmed and sometimes just get into analysis paralysis, as they call it. And this was something that would happen so often, and I would constantly be asking everyone else for their opinions. It was definitely a problem of mine, and something that I think a lot of my friends had to struggle with around me for a very long time. And it's certainly something that I am still figuring out how to get better at. But I want to share a little bit about what self-trust looked like when it came to building out the studio. Here's the thing is I think that there's a part of me that always wanted to build out a space like that in my studio and be able to really customize it and make it my own. And then there was everyone else's opinions. And it's interesting because many people would say to me, "Oh, like why don't you go and rent out a space?" And the thing is, I think the hardest one to overcome was my one of my coaches saying that, because I trust and value my coach's opinion. But at the end of the day, you also need to trust in your own opinion and your own wisdom and what feels right for you. And this is something that I think is super important and something I try and instill in my clients. You know, it's like I may have some thoughts and might share a little bit, but I really want you to tune into your own wisdom and tune into what really feels right for you. And to me, that is something that I think is really important to help my clients with, is learning to trust themselves. And while I might not agree with what they do, it's like it's not my life, you know, it's not my decision. It is your decision. And so it's very interesting seeing that as a client of coaching and being a coach myself, is this importance around being able to trust yourself and trust your own decisions. I think there's an interesting balance between trusting your gut or your intuition and making sure like you are exploring your options and playing out like what would it look like if I tried this other thing, because you know at the end of the day we only know what we know, right? And so I definitely went into the space of going, let me explore all my options, and knowing like there's a little part of me that did really want to make a studio happen in the way that I ended up doing. But I first went through the process of exploring all my options, and then I came back to the fact that of trusting in myself and playing out the fact that like I know what I really want to do. And because at the end of the day, I when I went and checked out all these other studios, they none of them felt quite right. And so I had to come home to that inner wisdom of mine and go, this is what I really want to do. And so I think at the end of the day, no matter what you do, it is learning to trust in your own decisions. And I think it's important to remember that in many circumstances, there is no real wrong decision. And so it is really just coming home to what feels right for you. And so for me, what felt right for me was being able to go all in on making this studio space happen in my own apartment and being able to create the thing that I really wanted for myself. Okay, so now that we talked about being able to learn to trust your own decisions and build that self trust, now we're going to move into what is called, what I like to call committing to the bit. What does it really mean to commit to the bit? I think of that phrase as something along the lines of like comedy where you're committing to the scene that you're playing out or something along those lines. But I like this idea where it means to fully embrace and dedicate oneself to the execution of a creative idea, character, or scene, no matter how absurd or challenging it may seem, with unwavering conviction and sincerity. This was literally me Googling it. But have been playing around with this exact phrase and really thinking about that in terms of the creation of this studio. To me, it was really going fully in to committing to the bit, to committing to the part of being a successful podcaster, YouTuber, whatever the term you want to use for it, but having the show that is really important to me, something that I am fully committing to the creative expression of. And it's interesting because I have been committed to my podcast all along. Like it is something that is incredibly important to me. And I think that there are points or along the way of creating something where it's like you're making a next level commitment to it. And that is what this felt like. It felt like up leveling the amount of commitment that I had to the podcast, where I was saying, okay, not only am I going to record the podcast, not only am I doing video, but I am fully moving into the creative expression of what this means to me and creating something that is this next level of commitment and going fully into committing to the bit of the podcast, of really doing video, YouTube, all of the components that go into this like next level of the podcast. There was an element of acting as if like this is completely the direction that we are moving in. And I think that the important thing to note here is this idea of this element of recommitting or committing in a deeper level and moving yourself along the path of whatever it is that you're doing. It's almost like a recommitment in some ways. And to me, when I went into deciding I want to build out the studio, it was I am fully committing to making this studio happen in the way that I want it to be made. And so it definitely was moving into this next level of the podcast. And so I think that's interesting because I see this in my clients, I see this in myself, but it's this idea of being able to move forward and move into that next level and recommitting myself to what it is that I want to create. And when we're creators, it's like, yes, you've been creating all along, but I feel like there are these pivotal points where it's like, oh, I'm moving into that next stage and allowing yourself to fully embrace that and move into it. I want you to ask yourself this question. How committed are you to what you're working on right now? How committed are you to the creation of what you're doing? And is there a way or that next level that you've been shying away from that would up level that level of commitment that you have to go, oh, I am fully committed to making this happen? Because I think so often we can be a little bit of 1 foot in and 1 foot out and saying, oh, I do this on the side. It's, it's this like fun thing I do, or whatever the case may be of what you're telling yourself. And I want you to ask yourself, like, how are you in your own mind expressing to yourself about this thing that you're creating? Maybe it is this kind of like half-baked idea, and it's a great question to ask yourself, like, what would it look like for me to really commit to the bit? what would I need to do that would make me feel like I am fully in on this thing? Even if you're doing this on part-time hours outside of a 9 to 5 job, I want you to think about what would that next level of commitment look like in the space of the time that you have. Because even when we are building it on the side, it doesn't mean that we cannot be committed to what we're doing. And so that is something that I think is so important, is that ability to say, like, I am fully committed to this thing that I'm creating. I am fully committed to making this happen. I am fully committed. I am fully committed to the bit. Now that we've talked about self-trust and committing to the bit, let's move on to embracing and enjoying the process. This one is really interesting because the process of creating the studio was not simple, and there was a lot of twists and turns along the way, and there was a lot of waiting and things not going according to plan. I will tell you, there were definitely moments along the way where I was frustrated or tired of dealing with the fact that I practically was only living in 50% of my very small New York City apartment because the rest of my apartment had been taken over by the construction of this studio. And it was interesting because it's like, even despite that, I allowed myself to have those moments of frustration. The way that I look at emotions these days is very different, where it's like, I want to make sure that I'm holding space for that and holding and allowing myself to be frustrated or be annoyed about things. And at the same time, I would check in and be like, hey, I want to enjoy this process. I think that it's interesting because so often we are so focused on the end result. We are so focused on the fact that I want to be here and I am over here, and being over here is bad and a problem and not where I want to be. And I think it's interesting when we actually change our viewpoint on what it means to not be at the end result. Because let's face it, the end result is kind of a moving target. We're always going to be pushing it out and changing it. You know, it's like you complete one thing and then you move on to the next. Like, that is part of nature, is like we're moving the goalposts, and we want to keep building and growing and changing. And so I think that there is something that is so incredibly important about enjoying where you are right now. And it was very interesting in the process of creating the studio, of allowing myself these moments of frustration and coming back to being present with the fact that this is not a moment I get to ever have again. I remember when I was painting in particular, and I just got to settle into this moment of being so present with this act of creation and going, wow, how incredible is it to be right here, right now, in this messy middle, in this moment of going, oh, like it's a disaster in my apartment right now. I've been so uncomfortable, but in this moment, like, it is so incredible what I am creating. It is so cool to be in the process and getting to paint on a wall. Let's face it, it's not every day that you get to paint on such a large scale. I normally paint watercolor on paper that's about this big, maybe this big. And if you're not watching me, I'm talking about, you know, a notebook or smaller size piece of paper is what I'm normally drawing on. And so to be able to paint on such a large scale was actually quite exhilarating. And I think that there are times where we're just kind of like, I could have begrudgingly been like, oh, I'm so tired, I don't want to do this. But instead it was like allowing myself to get excited about it, to really take in and bask in that moment and go, how cool is this? Even when I was in those moments of frustration, I think that there was a part of me that kept coming back to this experience of coming back to being in the process, being in that messiness, of being in this moment and going, I want to really be living in this. I want to be present for it. And I want to really embrace the fact that it is a unique experience that I'm getting to live out of the creation of this thing. Sometimes we can get lost in the wanting and the striving. And I think that there is so much incredible richness in being able to come back to this present moment and being able to enjoy it for what it is as this unique moment in time that we won't get back again. And not to make it into a sad thing, but actually make it into a beautiful thing. Time is always fleeting, and all we really have is the present moment. And I think that a lot of this comes from my spiritual practice, comes from reading incredible books like The Power of Now. But there is so much power in that. There is so much power in being able to come back to the present moment and really enjoy right where you are. I want to take a moment right here, right now, and enjoy this moment. This moment where I, for the very first time, get to be shooting in a podcast studio that I created for myself, for this thing that I love doing and I love creating. And so to be able to be in this exact moment is powerful. And so while I am building up the podcast, of while it is gaining more momentum, it is being able to appreciate all the little moments along the way of its becoming. And it's interesting because this is something that I want to share a lot more of, is that all of this is, it's still growing, right? And it's not that I have become this incredible, massive podcaster and coach or anything like that. It's like my audience is small, the things are still growing, and I have been learning to appreciate being in this stage of the process and not fixating myself on the vanity metrics or wanting to have all this, like, these things, these out exterior things that could say, like, oh, you're doing great, oh, you've made it, whatever that means. But instead being able to sit right here right now and go, oh, but this moment is perfect, this episode is perfect, everything along the way is allowing me to grow and learn and do the reps, if you will, and prepare myself for those bigger moments that I'm sure will come. And so it's allowing yourself to enjoy the process. I think about that a lot, where it's like there are certainly moments where I want to be in this exalted version of myself that I am building my way towards. But I keep coming back over and over again, especially lately, to having immense gratitude and appreciation for where I am right here, right now. So for you, if you are someone that is in that messy middle, if you are sitting there going, oh, I'm not there yet, and making it into a problem, I want you to turn back around and go, but how is it beautiful right here, right where I am? Because you don't get to experience those moments again. You don't get to experience, yes, the struggles, but also the beauty. Like, where is the good of where you are right now? Where is the good of being able to experience not being there yet, but being in the process of it, being in the becoming? How can you appreciate and enjoy and have gratitude for right here, right now, where you are, even if it's not entirely where you want to be? It requires a lot of appreciating where you are right now. And that is something that I think is so much of what I am working with many of my clients is appreciating the messiness, the figuring it out, the experimentation of it all, and really relishing in it, really enjoying right where you are, because it is in that process, it is in that moving each step forward. That's where the beauty is. It's not out there. It's right here, right now. I hope you can take a moment right here, right now, and enjoy where you are. Because this moment where you are in that becoming is beautiful and it is perfect. And so often we are missing out on the beauty of what is right in front of us. Okay, so in this episode, we have talked about learning to trust ourselves. We have talked about committing to the bit, and we have talked about embracing the process. So wherever you are right now, I hope that this episode can help you along that way of allowing yourself to be in that messy middle and committing to it fully, embracing where you are, recommitting to the craft of whatever it is that you are creating, and being able to trust in your own decisions and trust in that inner wisdom of the direction that you are moving in. I end every episode with saying that the world needs what you will create, and it is the truest phrase. It is something that I say to myself over and over again. It's something that has become like a mantra to me. And I say that every time because I think that it is incredibly true. The world does need what you will create. And I want to take a moment and just say this. You know, we are living in some really wild times right now. Like, history is in the making. And to me, the reason why I am committed to this bit, why I am creating this podcast space, why I am doing all of this, is because I firmly believe that there are so many people out there that are sitting on untapped potential, and the ability for us all to go, oh, what if I create that thing that I've been dreaming of? What if I start that studio, that yoga studio? What if I create that movie? What if I build this creation that's just sitting in my brain? It's like, what would the world look like? And so I want you to remember that the world really does need what you will create. It is only through our ability to keep committing and decide, like, this thing that I have been sitting on, it needs to become a reality, because it will create the world into the world that I want to live in. And that's why I do all this, because I firmly believe that by sparking more of this ability to have people commit to their creations, it is going to build the world that I want to see. I want to be in a world where we're all able to commit to the bit and create a better world and create these things that are going to benefit each other, that are going to help more people along the way. It's that brilliant ripple effect. So I hope that this is resonating with you. I hope that you can enjoy the process, commit yourself to your own creation, because the world really does need what you will create. All right, I will see you in the next video, and I will be sharing what really went into the making of the studio. So stay tuned for so much more of Permission to Flow. Want to create more flow in your life? Go to the description below and sign up for the email list. I'll be sharing more insights and strategies with you, just like the ones you heard today. Remember, the power to create the life you desire resides within you, and I'm here to support you every step of the way. The world needs what you will create.